Hi, my name is Annisa and Azizah. I'm senior high school to Trenggalek. I'm 12. I'm from East Java. I'll deliver my speech on 3, 2, 1. Well, the status quo, as many states declared to the founding police and face why they did it, because they feel that this movement actually meant for them. And then I have 3 problems. The first, that police department historical oppressive and violence. And then the second, that the police reforms not work anymore. And then the third, that police not trained and were not intended to do many of their job and they perform. The first, for example, is George Floyd is the example that they are brutally did the violence against the people of color overall the crime. And then the second, that police reform not work anymore because all of the way to reform is not enough and that's not change the police department. And then the third, that the police are not trained and they were not intended to do many of their job and they perform, because why the police is currently deal with all of those mental illness and then homeless, those domestic disputed and all of those violence. And then we want to defund the police rather than reform the police department. And then how our will look like. The first, that how to defund the police. Here, defunding the police to divesting the fund from police and reallocation to non-policing form of public safety and community support. And then the second, how we defund the police. First, that we will, instead of funding the police department, and a sizable chunk of the city's budget is invested in communities, especially the marginalized one, where much of the police occur. And then if the opposition still want to reform, and they will define a word with a bad police reform, because reforming police literally doesn't work, and they will define a word with not secure word. And then the opposition say that, and then the government say that reformer police is enough and that's important, but reforming police is not enough, because how many you reform, that's not give them the abundance, and that's the only way to stop all of this violence, all of this homeless and police, is to decrease the police and transform the condition that give rise to them. And then they say that it's justified that the society have a rise of security, and that's not relevant, because first, no, because the police department is not help enough and they have a deal with the violence, with domestic disputed and all of those homeless. And even if we need to secure, we can increase the society form, and they can make sure they can make a farm in every region to protect their society itself, and then the security based on society. Then come to my argument that first, the police officer and the police department reform is not work. And then the second, that defunding police can decrease the number of deaths. First, the police officer and police department reform doesn't work. Why that doesn't work? Because first, the only way to diminish the police violence is to reduce the contact between the public and the police. And then the second, the department offers the procedural justice as well as training for the implicit bias and the mindful, and then embrace the communities and police officer diversity, and then bans the warrior style of policing. The government say that they will do all of this. They will reform the police in diverse and then ban the warrior style of policing, and that's not enough because they still have a violent case. For example, like just Floyd, 51 other black men and 15 Indian, 9 Hispanic, and was killed by the police department after they say that they want to reform and they will create a policing and officer in diversity and pass all of those warriors type policing. And then the third, that we will reform are not fully intended to change the department for better, but excuse for the department to maintain the power and accrue bigger of budget, and then reform program come with more money and little accountability for police and containing circle of operation, because they are more powerful. And then the second argument, that defunding the police can decrease the number of deaths. Why? Because Because first, the police don't have a guarantee even if they reform into all of those sectors that are said on diversity and stop all of those barriers. Even if they reform on Asian, Indian, or whatever is it, that's actually always they're always the minority in police perspective. And then police don't have the guarantee. If they reform, they don't do the violence and all of those homeless. And then the second, that the police will lose society respect. And then why this is urgent? Because first, if we don't defund the police, they will be more powerful and have the ability to increase the number of deaths, because they still do all of this violence against the minority. And then why this is true? Because the police have reformed and we don't get a guarantee that they don't do it again. So then the only way is we must start to defund the police and start the movement that decrease the police power. And then after all of those movements, we can make the police powerless, and then we can decrease the number of deaths. And then why that's defunding the police service is important.